morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning, morning.
Wow, what a wonderful worship session with the Lord. We're just so grateful and thankful for it. Isn't He good this morning? Even through the physical challenges and the spiritual weariness, isn't He good? Isn't He worthy to be praised and worshiped this morning?
Amen.
We thank you for God this morning, and we got a text from Emily saying that our dear Pastor Jim is going to get his CT scan in about 2 minutes, and we are going to pray and knock on heaven's door for great results, for his inflammation to go down and that he does not need surgery.
Amen.
And so we're praying for them. So we're just so grateful and thankful this morning. Father in heaven, we're just so grateful and thankful for you, Lord, that your amazing grace has captured us, Lord God. That is drawing us closer and closer, my God. We see nearer and nearer to you, even though sometimes you feel distant, Lord. Or maybe it's us. But we are praying for our dear Pastor Jim, Lord God, that's getting his results in a couple minutes. Might it be mighty? Might you intervene, Lord Father, for the best results we're crying out to you, Lord, for. That you would do the miraculous, Lord Father, that you are the ultimate physician that does crazy things in and through our life. That you would intervene and put your super on the natural. That you would give the doctors the wisdom. That they will care for him spectacular and do mighty things, Lord Father. And might the result come out everything that we desire and want him back as soon as possible, Lord Father. But we know that the enemy attacks. We know he has a mission trip coming that wants to deter him, Lord Father. And that's the round table that we might push back the darkness with your marvelous light. So be with him. Might he get the positive report that we are crying for, Lord Father, that we're desiring for. And there's another brother, mom in here, and she's on terminal cancer, and we're praying for her as well, Lord Father. And the sickness, one another, might you be healthy and whole, and you comprehensively on earth or in heaven, Lord Father. That we know you can heal, you will heal, even if you don't, Lord God, as Jeremiah says. We're just so grateful and thankful for you, Lord, that you do amazing things and hide me behind the cross, Father. Might you speak in and through me this morning. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, I got a simple message this morning for you guys, and I plan to go exactly 32 minutes, and then I want us to kind of move the chairs away, and for us just to make a circle, and we're just going to pray for the next 15, 20 minutes or so. And maybe Jonathan will play us in the midst of our prayer, or he will join us, whatever the Lord needs. So we're going to pray it up. So we're diving into the text this morning, and we're just going to pray it up and knock on heaven's door, and whatever is on your heart. And prayer is so tremendous, and we need the power of God to work through our ministry this morning. So we're just so grateful for him and thankful for him. So I'm going to be reading from, I'm going to do 4 verses. Last sermon I did 26, so this is so if you can turn with me to Psalm 61. Psalm 61, 1 through 4. In the title of the sermon, as you see it there, when God seems distant. When God seems distant. Psalm 61. 1 through 4. Hear my cry, O God. Attend to my prayer. From the end of the earth, I will cry to you. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. For you have been a shelter for me, a strong tower from the enemy. I will abide in your tabernacle forever. I will trust in the shelter of your wings. Woo! Amen. What a word from God. When God seemed distant. I remember when I was younger, my dad would take long trips out of the country to Cambodia. So I would go through all sorts of different emotions wanting my dad when I was younger. And also, at times I would hear my mom weeping and crying. And I would say, Mom, and she would hold a picture of my dad. And I will also. And I would say to her, Mom, I wish Dad could just come out of the frame. So, have you guys experienced this? You know God is real. You know God is good. And He loves you. Sometimes it seems as though God seems distant and far away. Is He on the other side of the phone? God, do you hear me? So, this beautiful Psalms here teaches us what to do when God seems distant. So, Psalm 61 here is attributed to David. As we know, King David. God's scandalous grace forgives David's sin. He slept with his good friend's wife and killed him. But he still has to pay for the sin consequences, because in 2 Samuel 12 says that the sword will not depart from him, from his house. So at this point, his son Absalom has chased him out of the kingdom. And how do we know this? We're going off of verses 2 and 4. That he's been exiled from Jerusalem and the tabernacle. From the end of the earth, verse 2, I will cry to you. Verse 4, I will abide in your tabernacle forever. So he's fled from his son Absalom. Well, some historians say he maybe inked this letter right here when he came back from exile from his own son. That reigned and took his concubines, and his own best friend was traded to him. So this is the context of Psalm 61 here. But what I am saying this morning is, whatever David's location and proximity, his posture was a place where God seemed distant. He was in exile. He wanted to return to Jerusalem and back to his temple, the tabernacle. So he longed for God's loving presence, God's protective shield, and his invigorating grace, my Lord. So my main idea here is, you can never be distant or far away that God cannot hear you when you call.
That's right.
Lord, let me just say that again. You can never be distant or far away that God cannot hear you when you call.
Yes.
So this is a beautiful poetry. It's written typically as a song, it's a hymnal, but it's also a prayer book that the Hebrews would sing and would pray and would hum as they would go about their day. So how should we pray when God seems distant? Verses 1 through 4 teaches us to pray with assurance that God will hear and help.
Yes.
God, pray with confidence God will hear and help. The outline, ask God to hear you and ask God to help you. Hear my cry, O God, verse 1 says. Attend to my prayer. Hear my cry, O God, attend to my prayer. This is the essence of a legit and real prayer here. David is crying out to God. And this Hebrew word here is ranah. Is this crying? Is this piercing? Is this loud piercing scream? Is this ringing cry? The Blue Letter Bible says. It's almost as Freddie's hand is scratching on the chalkboard. It's this ringing cry, piercing cry. So usually this word ranah here is used as a cry of joy, of tears of joy. But in this here, and how it's expressed here, is that it's of agony, not of ecstasy. It's an urgent cry. I want you guys to feel the cry here. It's an urgent cry. It's a distress call. It's Batman signal going up. It's an SOS signal. So it's not a quick popcorn prayer. Or it wasn't just simply getting off our chest. But David here, he wants God to hear his cry. Have we prayed and cried like that? He wants us to lift, he wants him to hear his prayer. It's almost like that YouTube video. Linda, Linda, Linda. This prayer is getting God's attention. Listen, God. I want to say that God can hear you from the end of the earth. Verse 2, from the end of the earth I will cry to you. Some think it's a poetic statement that David was in exile from Jerusalem. He was outside of Jerusalem. But personally, I think this was a spiritual, not a physical distance or proximity, but this is a spiritual distance. When my heart is overwhelmed, God can hear you when your heart is overwhelmed.
Yes, He can.
When my heart is overwhelmed, when the circumstances of life, it's more than that. It's this idea of total exhaustion. You ever get burnt out emotionally, physically, and spiritually? It's one of running out of energy. It's complete exhaustion, tired, without hope, without courage, and without strength. When my heart is overwhelmed. See, we can feel distant from God, but at least our heart is not overwhelmed sometimes, right? We have the hope and the strength. But David here is experiencing both. He feels spiritually distant or far away from God, and now he's also feeling emotionally, physically, totally exhausted at the same time. But that's good news to us. Look what he does. He cries out to God. Well, we need to cry out to God sometimes. Amen. When the world is, the burdens and the heaviness and the ladens are heavy burdens on our shoulder. When our heart is overwhelmed, cry out to him. He's worthy. He goes on and he paints a beautiful picture here. And he says in verses 2, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. You need the protection, so you ask God to help you. You need the protection of God to help you. So David points out 3 beautiful pictures of how God protects his own. So the first picture here is God is a rock. Amen. Boy, didn't I needed a rock as we went to vacation last July to St. Croix, and me and Selena made a deal. She said, if we ride the ATV, the ATV up and around the mountain, do what you want to do, you got to go jet skiing with me. And you guys know, I don't have an anointing in the water. Me and the water don't get along. Even though my son is learning how to swim, praise God. So pray for me there. So as we go in around this serene, beautiful view of the rainforest, with the summer rain hitting us, and the steam coming off the ATV, but in the back of my mind, I knew that I had to go jet skiing, so I fully couldn't enjoy it as I wanted to. But we could have just flew off the cliff. That's how dangerous it was. It was about 12 miles. But that very moment, we ate, and she kind of soothed me. We ate a good meal before we got on the jet ski. And the instructor showed us, he gave me like a 3-minute lesson of how to swim, just in case you fall off, right? Oh gosh, my heart is overwhelmed at that point. So, and as we're riding, she's like, no, I'm going to take the lead on here. And she was driving the jet ski. So we go slowly, just going through the waves, hitting the waves, past the water, and then we go up past the line where you can just, over there in St. Croix, there's no cap on the speed limit like here in the U.S. So you can go as fast as you want. But she knew I was fearful. I wasn't scared. Fearful. Yeah. But just wish we passed the border where we could have just taken off. She takes one little loop around. Oh my gosh, we dropped in right into that water. And I said, help! Help! And the jet ski was all over in Yonkers, and she was swimming to the jet ski, and man, boy, I needed a rock. I said, I'm drowning, help me. And as my beautiful wife does, you know what she said? She said, no, you better swim over here. I said, submit, woman, submit. You better submit. I know I'm dying here. She said, you got a life jacket. I said, no, but I needed a rock. I couldn't. So I just went to the jet ski slightly. I was able to get back on. And I'll leave it there. There's more to it. I don't want to. Yeah. So we know in social media we say, oh, that's my rock. As the relationship rise. And I say, hey, Pebbles. Call her Pebbles. Just kidding. But But what's David saying here? That he needs a rock. David needed a rock because he was weak. Shipwrecked sailor in a turbulent sea. There's no help in sight. He cannot swim to safety just as I could have. The only hope to get to is a rock which he can hold on to. It's not a rock where the sea level can go above it, but a rock that's higher than I. That's what he's saying there. A rock that's higher than I, in verse 2. So we need the sovereign hand to lead him back to the high rock. Where is this rock? And who is this rock? Pray to a rock. He was praying to a rock. No, he was praying to the rock, not a rock. The rock is God himself. Amen. Psalm 62, verse 2 says, He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. Psalm 62:6 says, He is only my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. Again, in God my salvation, my glory, the rock of my strength and my refuge is in God. God is our rock, demonstrated by sending his son Jesus for us to hold on to for all time and eternity. Yes. Hang on to Jesus. Hang on to Christ. He's our rock. Hang on to him. Hold on. Cling on. We know there's turbulence at the sea. We know the water can rise. We know that rains and the storms can come. But hold on to the rock. This is his prayer. And the first reason, verse 3, we're tracking here, for you have been a shelter for me. This is the first reason God has already been proven to be David's shelter. He's a shelter. In other words, he's a refuge or a place for safety from danger. Refuge. This would have been the idea of refuge. It would be today, it would be an ancient panic room. It's a safe house from the enemies. Psalms 46:1 says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble when there's nowhere else to run. David found himself hiding in God. He refuge. He seeks shelter in God because he knew this was the safest place he knew. He was hidden in God. So are you hidden in God today, this morning? Is Jesus the safest place you know? Or are we insulating ourselves for maximum pleasures with the world? Insulate yourself. He's the safest place. He's our refuge. When you have a loved one hit with a sickness and going through cancer, who do we run to? Run to Jesus. Cling on to the hope. When our kids are wilding out, hang on to Jesus. When the report is positive or negative, cling on to Jesus. When you're still waiting on God, cling on to Jesus. The second reason God has been a strong, second reason here is God. In verse 3, a strong tower from the enemy. A strong tower from the enemy. So God has been a strong tower against the enemy. So this idea here, the strong tower, is the same purpose as refuge or shelter. But the difference would be the shelter of refuge is where you turn for safety when enemy chase you away from the city. But this strong tower is the idea here that this was a place of defense built onto the wall of the city. There was a watchman that would stand guard in the strong tower. When the enemies attacked, this was a strategic battle station where the enemies couldn't reach you. So the shelter was a safe place to hide. The idea is the strong tower was a safe place to fight. When the enemy is attacking you, are we hidden in the strong tower of Christ for his protection? Have we put on our full armor of God? Have we put on Christ? This is the position that we're fighting from a strong tower. And David knew this because he's been a strong tower. Might he be continuously a strong tower to you this morning if you're discouraged, if God seems distant. He's been a strong tower. He's reliable. Proverbs 18 says, the name of the Lord is a strong tower.
Amen.
The righteous man runs into and is safe.
Yeah.
That is good news.
Amen.
Last verse. Verse 4. I will abide in your tabernacle forever. I will trust in the shelter of your wings. You need the presence of God to help you. You need the presence of God to help you. Verse 4 highlights two ways the presence of God help us. It's God's presence satisfies, and God's presence sustains.
Amen.
I will abide in your tabernacle forever. This tent, this tabernacle, was a place where the Lord met with his people. It's before the temple. The tabernacle was the house of God. So David is suggesting that he was exiled and he's longed to return back to Jerusalem to be into worship of the sanctuary of God. He was longing for a place where God met him at the temple of the house of God. And Psalms 27:4 beautifully writes, one thing I have desired of the Lord, that I will seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and inquire to his temple. This ought to be our ultimate desire, is to be in the presence and the satisfaction of Christ, of God.
Yeah.
The safest place we know when our heart is overwhelmed, he is safe. God's presence sustains. I will trust in the shelter of your wings. Amen. Trust in the shelter of your wings. Oh Lord. This idea here, it's a mother bird or a hen, not a hen. It's a mother bird would allow her babies to eat and play in the open. But of course, when a predator is lurking, or a storm is ensuing and was coming, the mother bird would call her babies to herself. As they fled to the mother bird, she would open up her wings and they would hide under her wings. They would nestle, cuddle under her mom's wings. This is how God watches over us.
Amen.
That is good. Psalms 57:1 says, "Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me, merciful for me, for in my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings I will take refuge till the storm of destruction pass by." A mother bird will not refuse to open up her wings to her babies, to her children in time of trouble. And God will not turn those who seek Him for shelter and refuge under her wings.
Thank you, Lord.
But on the flip side, we are exposed to the unnecessary storm because we don't take refuge under the shelter of God's wings. Jesus says in Matthew 23:37. I want you guys to turn there. Matthew 23:37. Matthew 23:37 reads, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophet and stones those who are sent to her, how often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing." The Lord grieves deeply for every sinner who refuses to trust in Him. Grieves deeply. While Jesus is calling, we are run to the cross and take refuge under the shelters of His wings. Run to the cross. Run to the rock. Run to the strong tower. Refuge when your heart is overwhelmed. Run to Him when God seems distant. And He seems as though He doesn't hear or care. Run to Him. Pray for the supernatural breakthrough so you can push back on the darkness. It seems as though life always seems as darkness. It seems like the enemy is winning. But God says, no, no, no. Run to me. I'm the safest place you know.
That's right.
When doubt sets in, when fear sets in, when anxiety sets in, when depression sets in, when addiction sets in, and it feels like something is more safer than to run to Christ, might He be your panic room? Might we not lean on our own understanding, but lean on and cling onto the cross, cling onto the crucified, cling on the risen one.
Amen.
Amen.
He is good. He is worthy to be praised. He has made a home for us to reside in. This is not our home. This is just a layover. Run to Him.
That's right.
Who's heavy burdened and laden this morning when he seems distant? Run to Him. When you're facing your trials and tribulations, when it feels like you're going into a trial, coming out of one, or you're in one, it's the same course takes us, but He is worthy. He is there. He hears and He cares, and He's not distant. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
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 Praise be to God.
Okay, we're going to just circle up and pray just for a couple minutes. And then we're going to pray that God hears and God helps. God hears and God helps. So if we want to just circle up, we can move the chairs to the side. And we're just going to pray together, just circle around, pray as you're led. And I'll close this out.